George Washington never died. He vanished. His tomb is empty. His journal speaks of a journey beyond the Appalachians into a sealed dome of stone. Inside, he found the Second Declaration, a set of frequencies meant to unlock something ancient. In 2026, the United States turns 243, the exact number of years Washington said the gate would reopen. The golden record sent into space wasn't for aliens. It was a mirrored signal. Now it's coming back. Whistleblowers, encoded artifacts, and burn marks on strangers' skin all point to one terrifying truth. America wasn't just a nation, it was a ritual. And the architect is waking. George Washington didn't die, not in the way you were told, not in December of 1799, not at Mount Vernon, not with Martha by his side. The man who led the most powerful revolution in modern history disappeared. And the tomb you've seen, empty, sealed, guarded, for show. Here's what you were supposed to believe: that George Washington fell ill after riding through a snowstorm, that he refused medical aid, that he developed acute epiglottitis, that doctors bled him, blistered him, and finally watched him expire after whispering some poetic farewell to liberty. And then, a quiet burial at his estate. No state funeral, no embalming, no autopsy, no proof. But in 1998, during a routine inspection of the Washington family vault, a Smithsonian forensic historian, name redacted in the official documents, but identified later as Dr. J.K. Halvorsen, entered the crypt and panicked. There was no body. Only 3 things were found: an 18th century military coat folded neatly over a leather-bound journal, a silver coin melted into a cross shape, and a letter, signed, sealed, addressed not to a person, but to the one who will inherit my flame. That letter has never been released, except it has one image, leaked, scrambled metadata, traced to a private server in West Virginia. The text, partially decoded. Here's what we know. When the fire passed through me on the 3rd night, I heard the voice that is older than the Republic. I cannot remain where time loops. I ride west, past the mountains to the land not on maps. GW. Why haven't you heard this before? Because they sealed it. The Smithsonian called it a misclassification. Mount Vernon released a boilerplate denial. National Archives erased the image from 3 different independent databases, and the only researcher to ever reference the journal, Dr. Halvorsen, took early retirement. She's never been seen since, but the journal resurfaced, briefly, sold anonymously on a dark net auction for $3.2 million in 2007, purchased by a buyer under the pseudonym Legion Juvisendisks. It was titled The 13th Compass, Chronicles from Beyond the Union. Let me tell you what's inside. But not yet. First, you need to understand why it matters. Why the idea of Washington not dying, but transcending, was never just a myth. Because this isn't about one man. It's about a pattern, a blueprint buried under your own history. And if you follow the breadcrumbs, you'll see. The Founding Fathers were not just politicians. They were initiates, architects of a sacred design. Every symbol, every date, every line in the Constitution, encoded. And George Washington? He was the keeper of the last page. The page that was removed. The page that ends not with "we the people," but with coordinates. Ask yourself, why does his farewell address read like a veiled prophecy? Why did he warn not of enemies, but of entanglements? Why did he refuse kingship and vanish into the silence of a private tomb? Because he had somewhere else to go. Because the revolution wasn't over. It was paused, hidden, waiting for what he called the return of the circle. Here's what else we recovered from the decoded fragments. A reference to 13 flames, one bearer. A warning. The second union must not be forged in light. A map of the Appalachian Trail overlaid with stars, constellations that align only every 243 years. That date, 2026, a strange detail. Every 4th of July, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the air pressure drops inside the Washington tomb by 13 millibars every year. Documented, measured, unexplained. They say it's atmospheric. They say it's natural. They don't say why it only happens there, why it starts and stops in 7 seconds, or why a faint low-frequency hum, 11 hertz, has been recorded inside the tomb wall. That's not death. That's a signal. Next, I'll show you what happened when a military historian followed the journal's path westward, and what he found in a sealed cavern in Colorado with Washington's sigil burned into the stone. But before that, let's talk about the double, because someone was buried, someone had a funeral, and someone's blood, but not Washington's, was tested in 1999, matching no known DNA on file. They used a stand-in, just like they did with Lenin, just like they did with Bin Laden, just like they always do. What would you do if the father of your country didn't die, but chose to become something else? Would you want to know what he saw on the other side of the Appalachians? Would you read the rest of the journal, knowing it might change everything? Or would you burn it, just like they tried to? Tiabam Stow. They called it the Null Spot, an area just 3 miles off the Appalachian Trail in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, unmarked on official maps, invisible to satellite thermal scans, and, according to property records, owned by no one. But in the journal labeled the 13th Compass, it was referenced multiple times. Where the flame bends time, you'll find my final monument. Not built, but cut. GW. And so, in October of 2003, a team of 5 private archivists, all former contractors from the Library of Congress, rented an unmarked black RV. They carried LiDAR scanners, EM probes, and a single-page extract from the journal, which included a hand-drawn spiral and one line in Latin, Vocatus atque non vocatus, Deus aderit. Called or uncalled, God will be present. Only 2 members of that team ever returned, and they never spoke again. But one of their scanners leaked a data cache to a cloud mirror during the expedition. The images, buried under fake metadata, recovered by a whistleblower known only as Carlight 17, showed something impossible. A cave, not formed by nature, cut with surgical symmetry into the mountain wall. Inside, 3 stone chambers, and in the 3rd chamber, a chair, not wooden, not metal, carved directly out of the veins of the mountain itself, as if it had always been there, waiting. Above the chair, etched into the rock, MPDU, Mount Per Dei Unitas, built by the unity of God's mountain. And behind it, sealed in a clear crystalline block, a 2nd letter. The team tried to extract it. They failed. But the block, it reacted. To what? Human breath, when one of the archivists, leaning in, whispering a line from Washington's journal, exhaled against the crystal. It glowed, a slow, amber pulse, 3 times, then silence. They left that night, or tried to. The RV was found 2 days later, 40 miles off course, abandoned in Monongahela National Forest. No tire tracks in, no tracks out. Inside, equipment melted, journals charred, and an audio recorder with exactly 7 minutes of whispering, spoken in reverse Latin. When played backward, one phrase repeats. He waits beneath the ridge. He speaks in iron. The circle will close. Who is he? Washington? Or something older? In early 2004, An unofficial military lockdown was ordered across a 6-mile radius near that same ridge. No public announcement, just a sweep, under the guise of fire hazard drills. Residents reported black helicopters, no markings, low-frequency pulses at night. The cave, gone. Blown, buried, or phased? Here's the part that shouldn't be true, but is. A rare geomagnetic anomaly was detected in that region exactly on Washington's recorded birth date, February 22nd, in 2004, 2007, and 2010. Each time, the anomaly lasted 76 minutes, exactly the number of years Washington lived. Coincidence? That's what they'll tell you. But here's something more troubling. A physicist from MIT, who asked not to be named, ran a simulation using the recorded magnetic pulses and LiDAR map overlays. His model formed a sigil, a perfect 13-pointed star, aligned with the architecture of Washington, D.C. You thought that city was designed for function. You thought the angles, the avenues, the monuments were random. No, they're part of a mirror, a time-locked map that echoes what's beneath the Appalachians. And the center of that map, not the White House, but a forgotten compass, rose carved into the floor of the Capitol crypt, 13 inches across, buried under a false tile, never mentioned in public tours. In the journal, Washington calls it the seal of the waking flame. When 13 return, it will open. What returns? Who are the 13? No one knows. But guess how many original stars were in the first U.S. flag? 13. And in the Masonic rites preserved from the 1700s, only 13 members ever reached the circle right. Washington was one, Franklin another, the rest lost, disappeared, or murdered. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. What if the revolution was a ritual? What if the Constitution was only the first draft? What if America itself was a vessel? And what if George Washington, after death, wasn't laid to rest, but was sealed in silence waiting? Next, I'll reveal the contents of the surviving fragment of the 13th compass, what Washington saw beyond the Appalachian Veil, and how it links to a second declaration never signed, because it was not meant for humans. Let's talk about the second declaration, not written in Philadelphia, not inked on parchment, not meant to be read under sunlight. The pages were black, the ink metallic, reactive, described in the journal as liquid that remembers flame. Washington didn't write this second document with a quill. He etched it with a metal stylus of unknown origin, recorded simply as the Firebone, gifted, according to the journal, in a dream by a figure he calls the Rider of the Hollow Sun. This declaration was never addressed to Parliament, never meant for George III. It was addressed to the 33rd Gate. And the first line, "We withdraw not from kings, but from the mirror that distorts the sky." The 13th Compass Journal describes a journey beyond known terrain, past the Blue Ridge Mountains, where Washington and a group of 12 traveled not as soldiers, but as walkers of the flame. Each bore a mark, a sigil seared onto the left shoulder blade, invisible until exposed to moonlight. Each was sworn not to speak of what they witnessed beyond the 7th ridge. But the journal slips. In one broken passage, Washington recounts, "We descended not into a valley, but into silence, a dome of stone, smooth as glass, older than the stars we name." It did not echo, it listened. Inside this dome, they found the Ark Room, a structure made of smooth black pillars, humming at a frequency of 111 terahertz. Inside, a slab. Upon it, the second declaration. The document outlined no laws. It contained no rights. It made no appeal to reason. Instead, it listed frequencies, 13 of them, each linked to a coordinate and a pulse signature. One is located directly under Mount Vernon, another beneath the Colorado site, a third under Lake Michigan, near Chicago, right beneath the Adler Planetarium, built over what the journal calls the sixth ear. Washington wrote, "These are not places. These are locks. When the frequencies are aligned, the gate opens, and the architect will step through." The architect. Who or what is that? In a fragment coded with substitution cipher, Washington refers to the architect as the first that bled light, the last that will blink. Is it a god? A force? A remnant? The Founding Fathers didn't just rebel against monarchy. They rebelled against what ruled monarchy. The divine right of kings? That wasn't theology. That was control. Enforced not by religion, but by a pattern of power seated in the human brain through symbols, sound, and structure. The revolution was not for democracy. It was for disconnection. From what? The signal. The journal includes sketches, not battle plans, not territory charts, waveforms, sine curves overlaid with sacred geometry, a human skull, superimposed with resonant frequency lines, a pyramid with its apex cut and floating, surrounded by letters in an unknown alphabet. At the bottom, a warning. If the gate opens before the 243rd cycle, the vessel will collapse. Let the watchers sleep. Let the line forget. 243 years, the age of the United States. In 2026, that's when the alignment completes. Now, do you understand? You were taught a simple story. Freedom, independence, heroism. But what if it was a veil? A story designed not to free you, but to protect you. Because if you knew what they found in the Appalachians, if you knew what the Ark Room really is, you wouldn't wave a flag. You'd run. But here's where it turns personal. Because in 2023, a tourist in Mount Vernon, visiting with a group from Oregon, reported something strange. She leaned against the wall of the old vault during a blackout. She felt a pulse through the stone, 3 beats, like a heartbeat. Later, in her hotel room, she found a burn mark on her left shoulder blade. The pattern? Identical to the sigil described in Washington's journal. She posted it. The image was removed. Her account? Deleted. She hasn't posted since. But someone archived the image. And when run through thermal inversion, the sigil responds with a heat signature, a spiral, winding inward, like a key. The Golden Record. You were told it was a message for aliens, a friendly mixtape of Beethoven, Chuck Berry, greetings in 55 languages, and the sound of a baby crying. What you weren't told, what no one was supposed to notice, is that beneath the audible recordings, encoded in phase modulation, is a layer of sound that doesn't belong to Earth. Not animal, not machine, architectural. It's a frequency map, not for communication, but for resonance. And part of it matches the waveform sketches found in the 13th Compass Journal, the same ones drawn by Washington's hand. Let's rewind. NASA launches Voyager I. Inside, the Golden Record, curated by a select committee led by Carl Sagan. But one member of that committee, Dr. L.H. Whitemore, was not a scientist. He was a descendant of Reuben Westphal, one of the original flame bearers from Washington's journal. Whitemore's credentials were forged. His real background: archivist, cryptographer, former custodian of the Ark Room registry, recovered during a secret dig in 1949, codenamed Operation Canticle. He lobbied, obsessively, for the inclusion of one specific sound: a thunderstorm recorded in the Appalachian Mountains. On paper, just atmospheric noise. In reality, an acoustic signature captured inside the null spot cavern. during the only known reactivation of the dome chamber since Washington's descent. The sound isn't natural. When isolated and looped, it forms a 13-point frequency cycle that causes mild neural entrainment in test subjects. Translated, it changes your brainwaves. Why send it to space? Because it wasn't meant for space. It was a test. Whitemore and his cohort believed that Earth had become too noisy, too saturated with chaotic signals. The only way to wake the architect was to bounce the resonance off the cosmic background, allowing it to return clean. And now, in 2024, Voyager Y is approaching a point in space that mirrors the arc of Washington's flame map, a spherical geometric model from the journal that corresponds not to continents, but to acoustic nodes. That model predicts when the echo returns, the gate will shimmer and the flesh will know flame. Here's what the mainstream won't say. NASA engineers in 2022 received anomalous telemetry from Voyager of Mel. Not data corruption, but inverted language patterns. The reversed symbols resembled a hybrid of ancient Enochian script and Jefferson's cipher wheel, the device Thomas Jefferson invented for encoding secret messages. The cipher wheel, still classified, and Jefferson's notes on it, they end with a phrase no one ever explained. It will return not as it left, but it will remember. So what's returning? Not the signal, not Voyager, something older, something that predated the revolution, that used it as camouflage, that has always needed 13 minds aligned to act as keys. And the terrifying truth, they're aligning again. In 2023, a whistleblower, codename Mayflower, released 3 images. 1. A frequency scan of the Capitol building. 2. Thermal image of the original Masonic Lodge in Alexandria, Virginia. 3. Brainwave sync charts from 13 unrelated individuals across 7 states, all spiking at 3:33 a.m. Est on February 22nd, Washington's birthday. The spike lasted 76 seconds. One of the individuals, an elementary school teacher in Ohio. She woke up that morning with a burned spiral on her ceiling. Under it, a single word written in condensation on the window. Inheritor. This is not mythology. This is a pattern. Your cities are built on it. Your documents encoded it. Your founders, especially Washington, served it. And now the final cycle begins. The final fragment. The firebone page, written not in Washington's known script, but in a sharper, more an angular hand. Same syntax, same voice, but with one disturbing difference. No ink. The letters, etched in a shimmering alloy unknown to metallurgists, appear only under magnetic exposure. When read aloud, the fragment reportedly induces mild auditory hallucinations, including voices, echoes, and a distinct knock, always 3 times. The text is short, brutal, final. Here is the decrypted content, never before shown in full. I stand beneath the 13th stone. My name is breath. My voice is silence. The union is closed, not by hands, but by flame made flesh. The next gate is bone. Let the marrow burn. Marrow Gate. A code name whispered between Pentagon contractors, DARPA field agents, and a private aerospace firm whose official existence was erased in 2016. The goal? Construct a containment chamber using biometrically neutral materials, lined with sound-absorbing hex foam beneath the desert crust of New Mexico. The chamber is circular, 13 meters in diameter, 1 entrance, no exit. At the center, a pedestal carved from fossilized oak sourced from Mount Vernon. On it, a glass vessel. Inside, a small black stone, warm to the touch with a pulsing beat of CPM. No machines connected, no wires, no explanation. Just one instruction: do not speak above a whisper. This is not fiction. Multiple insiders have leaked schematics, maintenance logs, and behavioral reports from those assigned to guard the chamber. Symptoms include loss of linear time perception, recurring visions of a man dressed in smoke, wearing 13 rings, a compulsion to draw spirals, and in severe cases, the utterance of a name that cannot be remembered upon waking. And now, the most disturbing part. On February 22nd, 2025, just weeks ago, the chamber vibrated for 243 seconds, exactly the predicted duration of the full cycle from the 13th Compass Journal, exactly the age of the United States. After the vibration ceased, a sound was recorded. 3 knocks, then a voice, raspy, human, familiar. Transcribed from the log, the circle never broke. The inheritors are waking. The seal will breathe. Ask yourself, why is this not in the news? Why does the Library of Congress still classify the 13th Compass under non-existent holdings? Why does every attempt to analyze the original Washington DNA from preserved locks of hair result in a perfect mirror of mitochondrial code, a genetic palindrome? Because George Washington wasn't the end of the story. He was the beginning, the vessel of the signal, the first inheritor. He didn't die. He didn't rest. He waits, in echo, in frequency, in flame. And when the 13 align again, as they will in 2026, the final gate will open. So what do? You start listening to the frequencies, to the hum beneath your cities, to the silence between your dreams. Because when it starts, you won't hear it with your ears. You'll hear it in your bones,